Hey lovelies! The holiday season is in full swing, at least around my house, which of course means a ton of entertaining. So all month long, I am sharing easy but impressive ideas that will wow your guests with very little effort. And today we are talking about 5 awesome dessert ideas I think you guys are going to love. Now, each of these beautiful desserts, while technically homemade, features some store-bought elements to help cut down on prep time. Because let's be honest, don't you have better things to do? Like go to fancy holiday parties and watch great holiday movies? I know you do. So in the spirit of that, we are going to start with my simplest recipe. They are my pie crust cookies, and they happen to look and taste a lot like cinnamon rolls. What is not to love about that? I think that these look really impressive, but it's going to blow your mind how easy they are. So to start, I'm mixing some melted butter with a little bit of granulated sugar and some ground cinnamon. I'm going to mix that all together until it's well combined and then set it aside and turn my attention to my store-bought pie crust. Of course, you always have the option to make your own pie crust for this recipe, but come on, what could be easier than laying out a store-bought pie crust on a lightly floured surface? Nothing. Once you've got your pie crust down, you're simply going to take a spoon and spread all of this delicious cinnamon filling all over your pie crust. And then you're just going to roll your pie crust from one end to the other. Once your pie crust is rolled, you might want to chill it for a few minutes. That just makes it a little easier to cut. And then you can simply cut it into discs using a serrated knife. We're going to arrange each of our cookies on a parchment-lined baking sheet, and then our final step before baking is going to be to brush on just a little bit of egg wash. Now, egg wash is simply just one egg that's been beaten, and the reason we do this is because the egg wash helps us get a nice golden color during baking. We're going to bake these beauties at 375 degrees for between 7 and 9 minutes, just until they start to get nice and golden. And then you can transfer them to a cooling rack and turn your attention to your glaze. What would a cinnamon roll be without the glaze? Making a glaze like this is surprisingly simple. You're just going to whisk some icing sugar with a little milk or cream until it gets a nice creamy consistency. And then once your cookies have cooled completely, you can use a spoon to just drizzle on all of that glazy deliciousness. This is actually one of my favorite treats from childhood. I used to make these a lot when I was a kid, and they are really yummy. You're going to want to make extra. They're just one of those things. We are getting inspiration from one of my favorite festive flavors. We're actually going to be making these adorable eggnog cupcakes, and they are so tasty. They start with a store-bought cake mix. Now, if you want to be a hero and use your own cake recipe, you totally can. But I think store-bought cake mix is a great way to save time. So I've got a French vanilla cake mix hanging out in my bowl, and to that I'm going to add some ground cinnamon and some freshly grated nutmeg. I'm going to give that all a quick whisk so it's well combined, and then I'm going to start adding my wet ingredients. Now, my boxed recipe called for 1 cup of water, so instead of water in this recipe, I'm actually using some store-bought eggnog. I'm also adding a little bit of oil and some eggs, just like the box mix called for. And I'm going to stir that all up until it's nice and combined. And then I'm going to use a handy dandy ice cream scoop to scoop these into some cupcake liners. I've got my oven preheated 350 degrees. I'm going to get these into the oven and bake them according to package directions. Once they're out of the oven, you want to let them cool completely while you turn your attention to your icing. Because I am all about keeping things easy this holiday season, I'm starting with some store-bought buttercream. But if you want to make your own buttercream, I have a great recipe for that. I will link it in the description box below. To my buttercream, I want to add even more great eggnog flavor. I'm going to do that by adding a few splashes of eggnog and a little bit of rum extract. Now, rum extract can usually be found in the baking aisle at your supermarket or at a bulk food store. It's really inexpensive, and it definitely adds a little hint of rum flavor without adding any alcohol, so it's totally kid safe. We're going to mix this all together until it's well combined, and then I'm simply going to transfer it into a piping bag and then pipe it onto my cupcakes. I'm finishing these with one more sprinkle of freshly grated nutmeg, and there you go, my loves. A festive flavored dessert that is perfect for parties, but prepared in no time. Now, I'll admit it, maybe we got a little crazy on our next recipe, But I think it really worked out for the best. These, my dears, are salted caramel chocolate pecan cookies. And believe it or not, despite how decadent they sound, they only use a few ingredients. I'm starting for this recipe with some store-bought chocolate chip cookie dough. You know, the kind you find in a tube. Basically, I am going to take some of this chocolate chip cookie dough, roll it into a ball, and then roll it in some crushed pecans. I'm going to arrange all of that tastiness on a parchment-lined baking sheet, and then I am going to add 1 caramel candy to the top of each cookie. Now you know, these little guys, these little caramel candies, they come in plastic wrap. I just unwrap them and then place 1 in the center of each of my cookies. I'm sending these into the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 8 minutes or so. Once they come out of the oven, you are going to want to immediately sprinkle the caramel with a little bit of flaked sea salt. And there you have it, 4-ingredient salted caramel chocolate chip pecan cookies. Man, I should have put some pretzels in here. Next on our delicious dessert extravaganza, I have made these incredibly adorable single-serve, no-bake candy cane cheesecakes that I am totally in love with. Now for the crust of these little beauties, instead of using ground up graham crackers, I actually use some ground up shortbread. You could also do this with sugar cookies if you wanted to, or you could go classic with graham crackers. Totally up to you. The important part is that you use your food processor to pulverize them into a nice fine dust, and then you can add just a few tablespoons of melted butter, give it a good stir. This is going to help us pack it in and create a nice crust in the bottom of each of my mason jars. You just want to use something flat to really press that crust into the bottom of each of your mason jars to make sure that your crust is completely set. Then you can turn your attention to your cheesecake filling. This all starts with some room temperature cream cheese in a bowl. I'm using a hand mixer to beat it up and get it nice and smooth. Then I'm going to add some powdered sugar. I'm also going to add some heavy whipping cream to that, a few drops of peppermint extract to get our candy cane flavor, and a little red food coloring because I really, really want these to be adorable and pink. Once my cream cheese is nice and light and fluffy, I am going to simply spoon it into each of my dishes. Once you've got your cheesecakes completed, you're going to get them into the refrigerator for about an hour. You really want to give them a chance to set completely. Then you can top them with some crushed candy canes, a little whipped cream, and finish them off with an adorable mini candy cane for good measure. Candy cane, you believe how adorable these are? I actually got a boo from behind the camera. It's not the festive spirit. Finally, my lovelies, I have the pièce de résistance for your holiday table. It is this incredibly awesome Nutella tree. That's right, it's basically a Christmas tree made with Nutella and puff pastry. You just know it can't be bad. And of course, because this is all about easy, we are making this with some store-bought puff pastry. I'm keeping it on some parchment paper to make it really easy to transfer once I've got my tree shape made. I highly recommend you do this too. It is going to make your life a whole lot easier. We are going to take some room temperature Nutella, spread it all over our puff pastry, and top it with another sheet of puff pastry. Once you've got the two sort of glued together, it's time to use a sharp knife to cut out your Christmas tree shape. Now, don't throw away any of that excess. Just roll it up, put it on a baking sheet, and turn it into like some tasty Nutella croissants. You will not regret that decision. Now that we've got our Christmas tree shape laid out, it is time to make our cuts. Essentially what we're doing is using a sharp knife to cut branches, for all intents and purposes, into our tree. You'll notice I'm leaving a lot of space in the center. I'm doing this because I want to be able to carefully transfer my tree to a baking sheet without it falling apart. Now that we've got our branches cut, we can simply go in and twist each of our branches in the same direction. You'll see this beautiful pattern starts to form and it ends up looking super gorgeous, but it's going to get better once it's baked, so just wait for it. To finish this tree off, I'm just going to brush it with a little bit of egg wash. This is going to help it get nice and golden and beautiful. And then I'm going to gently transfer it over to our baking sheet. Into the oven it goes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for between 15 and 20 minutes, or until it becomes nice and golden and crispy on the outside. Just a word of warning, you'll wanna let your tree cool completely before you try to transfer it off of the baking sheet to a serving dish. Trust me on this one. You don't want all of that work to go to waste. Let's be serious, it was hardly any work at all. Easy but impressive. Am I right? Guys, I hope you will give all of these tasty ideas a try, and if you do, be sure to tweet me, Instagram me, or Snapchat me a photo because I always love seeing your holiday creations. Keep in mind the full recipes are available in the description box below, so take a look for them there. If you missed my easy but impressive appetizer video that I shared a few days ago, I highly recommend you check that out. The recipes are just as easy and just as impressive. And stay tuned because I've got lots more great ideas coming to you very, very soon. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe because there is lots more deliciousness where this came from.